war changes the sound of everything. Even the wind. Even silence. Corporal Ryan Hayes had learned to listen differently. After months at the front, he could tell the difference between thunder and artillery, rain and falling shells. But that morning was different. The air felt heavier. The sky looked bruised. The world smelled of ash and something missing, something human. Ryan and his squad moved through what used to be a village. Houses were gone, burned to their bones. Windows hung open like hollow eyes. Every step crunched glass, every breath carried dust. The war had taken more than ground here. It had taken sound, color, laughter. He didn't speak. None of them did. The men had stopped talking days ago. There was nothing left to say when everything around them screamed without words. They searched for supplies, for signs of life. But life didn't survive long here. Not under skies that had forgotten mercy. And then, faintly, under the whisper of the wind, Ryan heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A weak, trembling cry. Not human. Smaller. Softer. A whimper. He froze, hand in the air. The squad halted behind him. "You hear that?" he asked quietly. No one answered. They just waited. The sound came again, short, broken, pleading. Ryan followed it, his boots sinking into the mud. The others stayed back. They thought it was a trap. Everything could be a trap. But something in that sound cut through his fear. Behind a collapsed wall, half covered in bricks and smoke, he found it, a small dog, no bigger than a child's pillow. One leg twisted wrong, one eye crusted with blood. The animal trembled so hard that its whole body shivered like a leaf in winter. Ryan knelt down slowly. "Hey, easy, easy," he whispered. The dog's breathing hitched, a soft growl deep in its throat. But it didn't bite. It just looked up at him, eyes wide, lost, asking for something it didn't know how to ask. He took off his glove and reached out. The fur was cold, wet, sticky with dirt and blood. "You're gonna be okay, buddy," he murmured, wrapping the small creature in his jacket. Behind him, Sergeant Cole shouted, "Hayes! Leave it! We move in 2 minutes!" Ryan looked back but didn't answer. He held the bundle tighter, feeling the fragile heartbeat against his chest. He didn't know why, but that heartbeat mattered more than orders. He stood and carried the dog with him. The others stared as he passed, some shaking their heads, some smirking. "You losing it, Hayes?" one called. "You planning to adopt it?" Ryan didn't reply. They walked for hours until the sun sank low, burning red behind clouds. The smell of smoke thickened again, and every mile felt heavier with the weight of what they carried: guns, memories, guilt. But Ryan carried something else too, a little piece of life, stubborn enough to survive where nothing else had. At camp that night he sat apart from the others. He used the corner of a rag to clean the mud from the dog's fur, whispering quietly as if the world might break the silence if it heard them. The dog's tail moved, weak but real. Ryan smiled for the first time in weeks. "Guess you're stuck with me now," he said softly. "You need a name." He thought for a moment, then looked at the sky. "Scout," he decided. "Because you found me before I found you." Scout blinked, head resting against his sleeve. The sound of distant gunfire didn't seem to bother him anymore. For a moment, either of them belonged to war. The next morning, when the squad packed to move, Sergeant Cole pointed at the bundle in Ryan's arms. "You can't bring that mutt. Command'll have your head." Ryan didn't move. "Then I'll hide him." Cole frowned. "This isn't a charity. It's a battlefield." Ryan met his eyes. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's exactly why I can't leave him." They left at dawn, marching into fog thick as smoke. Scout was tucked under Ryan's jacket, silent and still. Every few steps, Ryan felt the heartbeat against his ribs. Steady. Alive. A reminder that somewhere beneath all this ruin, something pure still existed. The men didn't talk much on the road. War had turned words into luxuries. But Ryan caught one of them watching him, shaking his head with a half-smile. "Man's lost it," the soldier muttered. Saving a dog in the middle of hell. Maybe he had lost it. Maybe he'd lost everything that used to make sense. But as the morning light crept through the clouds, Ryan felt something shift inside him. Something small, quiet, almost forgotten. Hope. He didn't know it then, but the tiny life trembling in his arms would one day pull him from the edge between life and death. For now, all he knew was this: he had saved a dog. And somewhere deep down, fate was already writing the moment that dog would return the favor. By the second week, the men stopped teasing Ryan about Scout. War had a way of stripping the noise out of people, leaving only what mattered. And somehow, the little dog had started to matter, even to them. When the nights grew too quiet and too long, Scout's soft breathing became the only sound that didn't hurt to hear. He slept near the fire, sometimes curled against Ryan's boots, sometimes wandering from soldier to soldier, as if he was checking to make sure they were still alive. The men started saving scraps from their rations, bits of bread, half a can of beans, the corner of a cracker. Scout would take it gently, his eyes lifting to meet theirs for just a second. It was the kind of look that reminded them they weren't animals, even when the war tried to make them forget that. One night, a storm rolled in, black sky, hard rain, thunder that sounded like incoming shells. The men huddled under their ponchos, soaked and shivering. Scout crawled under Ryan's jacket, trembling against his chest. Ryan whispered, "It's okay, buddy. Just noise. Just sky yelling." The dog pressed closer, heartbeat quick and fragile. That night, when lightning flashed, Ryan saw faces in the dark, not the living, but the ones he couldn't save. The faces that visited him every night, when the world went still. Scout's weight on his chest was the only thing that kept those ghosts from pulling him under. The next morning, when the rain finally stopped, Sergeant Cole called them together. They were moving north, deeper into enemy ground. The orders were clear: no unnecessary baggage. He looked at Scout when he said it. Ryan stood silent, jaw tight. The others looked away. Cole wasn't a bad man, just tired, broken in his own ways. He sighed. "You can't carry that thing forever, Hayes. War doesn't make room for pets." Ryan met his gaze. "Then I'll make room myself." Cole's eyes lingered on him for a moment, then softened. "Just don't get yourself killed for a dog." Ryan nodded. But deep down, he already knew, if it came to it, he would. The march north was brutal. Mud up to their knees. The smell of decay everywhere. Scouts, human scouts, moved ahead, searching for ambushes. Ryan named the dog for them, but in truth, Scout was the only one who never seemed to lose his way. He could sense danger before anyone else. Twice he growled just seconds before shots cracked through the trees. Twice, those warnings saved lives. The men stopped laughing after that. "Guess he's more soldier than we are," one of them said, rubbing Scout's head. Scout wagged his tail, proud and silent. Days blurred together, hunger, cold, exhaustion. But Scout gave them something rare, a reason to smile. A heartbeat that wasn't powered by fear. When the mail came, the men passed around letters from home, wives, mothers, children. Ryan had none. No one waiting. He'd always been the quiet one, the one who joined not for glory, but to disappear. But now, when he looked at Scout sleeping beside him, he realized he wasn't alone anymore. That night, as the men drifted to uneasy sleep, Ryan stayed awake, staring into the fire. He thought about the people he'd lost. About how death and war didn't always come with warning, sometimes it came quietly, in the middle of a breath. He looked down at Scout, who twitched in his dreams, paws kicking softly in the air. Ryan smiled faintly. "You don't even know how much you've done for me, do you?" The next day brought chaos. They were ambushed, sudden, savage, fast. Bullets sliced through the trees. Explosions tore through the ground. Ryan dove for cover, dirt and smoke filling his lungs. "Take cover! Move!" someone shouted. Scout barked, high and sharp, the sound cutting through the chaos. Ryan turned just in time to see the dog sprinting toward him, dodging debris and flame. Then, a blast. The world went white. When Ryan woke, the sky was dark again. His ears rang. His chest ached. Around him lay silence, the kind that didn't belong to life. Bodies. Smoke. Ash. "Scout!" he called, voice breaking. "Scout!" No answer. He staggered through the wreckage, vision blurred, heart pounding. He tripped, fell, got up again. His body screamed in pain, but he didn't care. Then, under a broken plank, he saw movement. A small paw. A faint whine. Hey, it's okay," he gasped, lifting the wood with shaking hands. Scout lay there, blood on his side, eyes half open. His tail moved once. Ryan's throat closed. No. Don't you quit on me now." He pressed his hand against the wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. His own tears mixed with the dog's blood, soaking into the dirt. "You saved me," he whispered. "You stupid, brave thing, you saved me." Scout licked his hand once, weak but deliberate. Then his eyes closed. Ryan held him close, trembling, whispering every promise he could think of. "I've got you. You're gonna be fine. I swear it." He didn't know how far he walked after that. He just walked through mud, through night, through hell, with the dog in his arms. When he finally reached the field hospital, his uniform was torn, face streaked with dirt and tears. The medics took one look and rushed forward, not for him, but for the limp bundle he carried. "Dog's hit," one of them said. "Get me morphine, small dose." Ryan collapsed beside the cot, too weak to stand, too empty to speak. He watched as they worked, wrapping, stitching, praying. And when Scout's breathing finally steadied, Ryan exhaled a sound that wasn't quite relief, wasn't quite a sob, something in between. He leaned close and whispered, "You hang in there, buddy. Because I'm not done owing you yet." Outside, the war went on. But for that night, in that small tent, it felt like time had stopped for two broken souls who had somehow saved each other. Scout's recovery was slow, but every heartbeat he fought for gave Ryan something to hold on to. The field hospital was a blur of moans, bandages, and whispered prayers, yet somehow the small cot where Scout lay became the center of it all. Soldiers stopped by between patrols, slipping bits of food to him, scratching behind his ears, talking softly like he was one of their own. The doctor shook his head more than once. "It's a miracle this mutt's still breathing." Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah. He's got a habit of proving people wrong." Every day, Ryan sat beside him, cleaning his wound, whispering stories about home, even though he didn't have one anymore. Maybe he just needed to remember what hope sounded like when spoken aloud. After 2 weeks, Scout managed to stand. His legs trembled, but his tail wagged, and that simple motion was enough to make every exhausted man in the tent smile for the first time in days. When Ryan's unit was cleared to move out again, the doctor looked at the dog, then back at Ryan. "He's not bad already." "Neither are you, if we're honest." Ryan strapped on his pack anyway. "We'll heal on the move." The march was relentless, hills, mud, and the sharp taste of fear on every breath. But now, the men had something more than orders to follow. They had a story, the story of a soldier and his dog who refused to die. At night, when the fire burned low, Scout would curl at Ryan's side. Sometimes Ryan caught himself talking to him like he was human. About the people he'd lost. The things he'd seen. The guilt that never seemed to leave. Scout didn't answer, but he didn't need to. He just listened, the way no one else could. As weeks passed, Scout grew stronger, faster, sharper. He began to sense danger before it arrived. Once, when the platoon approached a small valley, Scout froze, growling low. Ryan signaled the men to stop. Moments later, a landmine went off just ahead. That single bark saved the entire unit. After that, even Sergeant Cole, the man who once called him baggage, started giving him his own rations. "Guess that mutt's earned his stripes," he said, half smiling. But war doesn't let anyone rest for long. The enemy had begun pushing harder, cutting off supply lines, forcing men to march without food for days. Hunger gnawed at them like a second war inside their bodies. Every step became a test of will. Ryan noticed Scout growing thinner too. He tried to share what little he had, a crust of bread, a drop of soup, but even that wasn't enough. The others offered scraps, but soon there was nothing left to offer. One night, the men sat in silence, stomachs empty, watching their breath cloud in the freezing air. Someone muttered, "We're ghosts walking." Ryan looked down at Scout, curled weakly against him. He ran a trembling hand over the dog's fur. "Not while you're here," he whispered. "Not while you're breathing." The next morning, they stumbled upon an abandoned village, walls half burned, roofs caved in. It was silent except for the wind whistling through broken windows. Ryan searched every house, desperate for food, for water, anything. In one corner of a crumbling house, he found a metal bowl and a child's toy, a wooden dog carved by hand. He stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it into his pocket. Scout followed closely, his eyes alert, nose twitching. Suddenly he barked, short, urgent. Ryan turned just in time to see movement behind the wall. He dove for cover as a bullet sliced through the air. Gunfire erupted. The men scrambled for defense, ducking behind debris. Scout darted between them, barking, warning, running toward the danger instead of away from it. Ryan shouted, "No! Scout, stay!" But it was too late. The dog had already leaped toward the source of the shot. The crack of a rifle echoed again, then silence. Ryan's heart stopped. He crawled forward, pulse hammering, ignoring the bullets slicing the dirt near his hands. When he reached the wall, he found the enemy soldier down, disarmed, and Scout standing over him, teeth bared, one paw bleeding. Ryan grabbed him, pulled him back. "You crazy, brave thing," he said, voice breaking between laughter and tears. After the skirmish ended, the men gathered around the small fire they built from shattered furniture. Cole looked at Ryan and shook his head. "That dog's more soldier than most men I've ever known." Ryan smiled weakly. "He's got more heart, that's for sure." Scout limped closer, resting his head on Ryan's leg. The firelight danced in his eyes, tired but alive. As the flames flickered, Ryan whispered, "You keep saving me, buddy. But one day, I swear, I'll be the one who saves you." He didn't know it yet, but that promise would soon be tested, in a way either of them could imagine. The dawn after the firefight brought no calm, only a strange silence that felt heavier than the gunfire itself. Smoke hung in the air, curling through the broken village like a ghost that refused to leave. The men were exhausted, bruised, and hungry, but alive, and that meant something. Ryan crouched beside Scout, wrapping a torn bandage around his paw. The dog whined softly, licking Ryan's hand as if to tell him it was okay. "You've got more fight in you than any of us," Ryan whispered. But in the distance, thunder wasn't thunder. It was artillery, rolling closer. Sergeant Cole gave the order to move. "We're outnumbered. We head west. The forest might give us cover." They packed quickly, leaving behind everything that wasn't essential. Ryan looked down at Scout. "You ready?" The dog tilted his head, tail flicking once, and that was answer enough. The march into the forest was slow and punishing. Roots tangled around their boots. Every sound made them flinch. A twig snapping could mean death. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Sunlight vanished. Time vanished with it. Hunger returned with a vengeance. They hadn't eaten in days. The men's faces grew hollow, eyes sinking into shadow. One soldier collapsed mid-step, body trembling. Ryan tried to lift him, but there was no strength left in his arms. Scout barked weakly, pacing beside the man, as if urging him to stand. Cole's voice cracked. "Leave him, we can't carry everyone." Ryan froze. The words felt like a knife. "He's one of us," he said quietly. Cole's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. He turned and kept walking. Ryan stayed a moment longer, pulling a canteen from his belt, tipping the last drops of water into the fallen man's mouth. Then he followed. Scout trotted at his heel, limping but determined, his fur matted with mud. Every few steps he'd pause, sniffing the air, leading them away from danger they couldn't see. The men began trusting him more than their own maps. That night, as they huddled beneath the trees, Ryan stared into the darkness. His stomach ached from emptiness, his mind from the weight of too many memories. He whispered, "Why do we keep going, Scout?" The dog lifted his head, eyes bright even in the dim light. Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah, because stopping isn't an option." Before dawn, the sound of engines broke the silence. Enemy trucks. Cole hissed, "Down! Hide!" They scattered into the brush, barely breathing. Scout pressed flat against Ryan's chest, not making a sound. Through the leaves, Ryan saw the convoy, a dozen soldiers, rifles slung, moving slow. Too close. Then, from behind, a branch snapped under someone's boot. One of their men. The sound was small, but enough. The truck stopped. Soldiers jumped down, shouting in a language Ryan didn't understand but felt in his bones. Gunfire erupted. Trees splintered. Men screamed. Ryan grabbed Scout and ran. He didn't think, he just moved, weaving through the forest, ducking behind fallen logs, heart hammering like a drum. He could hear Cole shouting somewhere behind him, then silence. Only the echo of shots fading into the distance. When Ryan finally stopped, gasping for air, he realized he couldn't hear anyone else. The forest had swallowed the rest. Just him and Scout. He crouched behind a tree, trying to calm his breathing. Scout's sides heaved, tongue lolling, eyes wide. "We're okay," Ryan whispered, though his voice trembled with disbelief. "We're okay, boy." They moved quietly, deeper into the wilderness. For the first time, Ryan had no map, no orders, no one to follow. Just instinct, and a dog who seemed to know where safety might live. Hours passed. Then days. The rations were gone. The canteen was empty. Ryan tried to hunt, but his hands shook too much to aim straight. Scout tried too, catching nothing but silence. By the fifth day, Ryan's legs felt like lead. His lips cracked, skin burning from thirst. He stumbled, caught himself, then stumbled again. Scout barked softly, circling him, nudging his leg. "I'm fine," Ryan muttered. But he wasn't. His vision blurred. The world tilted. He dropped to his knees. Scout barked again, sharper this time, then ran ahead a few yards, turned, and barked once more, louder, urgent. Ryan frowned. "What is it?" The dog vanished into the trees. Ryan forced himself to follow. Each step felt like lifting a mountain. His breath came in ragged bursts. But then, through the branches, he heard it, the faint sound of water. A stream. Ryan fell beside it, scooping handfuls to his mouth, gulping greedily. Scout drank beside him, tail wagging weakly. For the first time in days, Ryan felt something like hope. But hope in war is fragile. When he lifted his head, he froze. Across the stream, two figures stood, rifles aimed. Enemy soldiers. He raised his hands slowly, eyes locking with theirs. Scout growled, low and dangerous. One of the men shouted something, then fired. The bullet tore past Ryan's shoulder. Scout lunged forward with a snarl that didn't sound like fear, but fury. Ryan shouted, "No!" and dove after him. Gunfire exploded through the forest. And just like that, everything went black. When Ryan opened his eyes, everything was blurry. His head throbbed. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and sweat. He tried to move, but his hands were tied behind his back. His body ached from where he'd hit the ground. It took him a moment to remember. The forest. The gunfire. The dog. His heart raced. "Scout?" he rasped, his throat raw. A sound answered from the corner, a faint whimper. Ryan turned his head. There, behind a stack of crates, Scout lay chained, his fur matted, his eyes open but dull. "Hey," Ryan whispered. "You're alive. You're okay." The dog lifted his head weakly, tail tapping once against the floor. That tiny sound was enough to pull tears to Ryan's eyes. He looked around. A dim shack. Wooden walls. Two enemy soldiers outside the door, their muffled voices blending with the distant rumble of trucks. It was some kind of outpost. Ryan's body screamed for rest, but his mind was already calculating. The ropes on his wrists were tight, but not perfect. If he could loosen them, if he could wait for the right moment. Hours passed. The soldiers changed shifts. The room grew darker. Scout hadn't stopped watching him. His gaze was steady, like he understood what Ryan was thinking. When night fell, one of the guards stepped inside, yawning. He said something under his breath, kicked a can aside, and poured himself a drink. He didn't notice Ryan's fingers working slowly at the rope. The fibers burned his skin, but he didn't stop. Every heartbeat was a countdown. Then, a sound, a sharp bark. Scout. The guard turned, startled, spilling his drink. In that second, Ryan twisted his wrists free, lunged forward, and slammed his shoulder into the man. They fell hard, the rifle clattering to the floor. Scout growled and yanked at his chain until it snapped free. The noise brought the other guard running. Ryan grabbed the fallen rifle, swung it up, and fired once. The echo shook the tiny shack. Silence followed. His chest heaved. His hands trembled. He looked at the bodies, then at the dog. "We're not dying here," he whispered. "Not like this." He cut Scout's chain completely and checked his side, still bruised, but strong enough to walk. They slipped into the night, running through the trees with no direction but away. The forest was alive with shadows and echoes, but the cold air felt like freedom. For the first time in days, Ryan could see the stars again, scattered like distant lanterns above the treetops. He stopped for a moment, gasping for breath, and looked down at Scout. "You saved me again," he said softly. "How many times is that now?" The dog tilted his head, as if trying to count. They didn't stop moving until dawn. When the sun rose, Ryan realized where they were, the edge of the old valley near the mountains. It was far from their lines, maybe 50 miles or more. He needed to find food, water, shelter. But all he had was a wounded dog, a stolen rifle, and a will that refused to die. They rested beside a fallen tree. Ryan broke open his pack, found a few crumbs of hard bread left from the village. He split it in half. "Here," he said, handing a piece to Scout. "You earned it." Scout ate slowly, his eyes never leaving Ryan's face. That look, it wasn't just gratitude. It was trust. Unshakable, undeserved, but real. Ryan leaned back, eyes closing for a second. The exhaustion finally caught up to him. "If we ever make it home," he murmured, "you're getting a real meal. And a nameplate. No more scraps." The sound of birds filled the air. For the first time in months, the world seemed almost peaceful. But peace never lasted long. By afternoon, Ryan spotted movement across the ridge, figures, half a dozen at least. Uniforms. Armed. He ducked low, pulling Scout close. Through the binoculars he'd taken from the shack, he saw the insignia. Enemy patrol. He couldn't run this time. They'd track him easily. He scanned the terrain, narrow valley, steep cliffs, a stream cutting through the middle. He needed to think fast. Then, he noticed a small cave hidden behind the rocks. Barely big enough for one man and a dog. But it might be enough. They slipped inside, hearts pounding. The patrol moved closer, boots crunching on dry leaves. Voices echoed. Scout pressed against Ryan, silent, motionless. Ryan held his breath. One wrong sound, one cough, one bark, and it would be over. The footsteps passed. Then faded. Ryan exhaled slowly, feeling his pulse in every inch of his body. He rested his forehead against Scout's fur and whispered, "You did good. You're keeping us alive." Outside, the world was still dangerous. But inside that cave, for the briefest moment, there was safety. 2 survivors. 2 souls holding each other up. He thought about what Sergeant Cole once said, that war doesn't make room for pets. Maybe that was true for most. But for him, Scout wasn't a pet. He was proof that something pure could still exist in the middle of chaos. Ryan closed his eyes. "We'll make it," he said softly. "You and me." The dog's tail thumped once. And in that sound, soft, stubborn, defiant, was every reason to keep walking. The morning broke cold and gray. Ryan awoke to the sound of rain tapping against the rocks. The cave was damp, and his clothes clung to him like ice. Scout lay curled beside him, breathing slow and steady. For a brief second, Ryan just listened to that rhythm, the sound of something still alive. Something still fighting. He stretched his arms, wincing at the bruises. His body was battered, but his mind was clear. The mission was simple now: survive, reach the river, and find a way back to his unit. That was it. But every step would be a war on its own. He tore a strip from his torn sleeve, wrapped it around Scout's paw where a cut had reopened. "You're tougher than I'll ever be," he whispered. The dog only blinked and nudged his hand. They started walking as the rain thickened into a curtain. Mud sucked at their boots. The forest floor turned slick, and every branch looked like it was waiting to betray them. Ryan moved quietly, eyes scanning for movement, but part of him couldn't stop watching Scout. The dog limped, but never slowed. Not once. Hours passed. The rain never stopped. Hunger gnawed at them both. Ryan chewed on a few roots he'd found under the bark of a fallen tree, bitter, almost inedible. He offered one to Scout. The dog sniffed it and turned away. Ryan smiled weakly. "Can't blame you. It's awful." By noon, the clouds finally began to break, and light seeped through the leaves like hope itself. Ryan found a small creek and dropped to his knees, cupping the cold water in his hands. Scout drank beside him. The taste of real water felt like life. They followed the stream for hours, hoping it would lead somewhere. Ryan remembered an old saying from training: "Water leads to life." Maybe it would lead to people, maybe to safety. Or maybe to trouble. But doing nothing wasn't an option. As dusk fell, he spotted smoke in the distance. Faint, thin, curling into the darkening sky. His heart skipped. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant humans. He crouched low, motioned for Scout to stay behind. Step by step he moved closer. Through the trees he saw a small cabin, old and half-collapsed. Someone had made camp inside. A lantern flickered, casting moving shadows. Ryan watched for several minutes. No voices. No movement. Carefully, he stepped inside. The air smelled of damp wood and old tobacco. There were empty cans, a broken chair, and on the table, a canteen, a map, and half a loaf of bread. He froze. That bread looked like gold. But something in him hesitated. What if someone was still here? Scout slipped in silently, sniffing the air. No growl, no bark, just alert eyes. Ryan picked up the bread and tore it in half. "We'll take what we need. That's all," he whispered. He opened the canteen, still water inside. He drank slowly, saving the rest for Scout. Then his eyes caught the map. It was worn and faded, but he recognized the terrain lines, the river, the valley, the marked outpost. And there, drawn in red pencil, was a dotted path leading south. Toward friendly lines. His heart thudded. "This is it," he whispered. "This is how we get home." He rolled the map, tucked it into his jacket, and looked around one last time. Then he saw something carved into the wooden wall. A name. And beneath it, a date. 1943. Whoever had been here was long gone. Maybe another lost soldier. Maybe someone like him. As they left the cabin, Scout suddenly stiffened, ears pricking forward. Ryan froze. The faint crunch of boots echoed behind them. He dropped low. Two figures were approaching from the trail, rifles on their shoulders, talking quietly. Enemy scouts. Ryan's heart hammered. They couldn't fight. Not here. Not now. He motioned Scout into the shadows and waited. The men passed within 20 feet. One of them stopped, glancing toward the cabin. Ryan held his breath. Then, from the distance, a howl, long and lonely. The men paused, muttered something about wolves, and kept walking. When the sound faded, Ryan turned to Scout. "That was smart," he whispered. The dog wagged his tail once, as if to say he meant it that way all along. They moved south through the night, guided only by the faint light of the moon and the memory of the map. Every step felt heavier. Every sound sharper. But Ryan couldn't shake the growing sense that they were getting close. Sometime near dawn, they reached the ridge. Below it stretched a wide plain, and beyond that, the faint glint of metal and light. It was a base. Small. Remote. But friendly. Ryan's throat tightened. "We made it," he whispered. "Scout, we actually made it." But before he could take another step, a gunshot cracked through the air. He dropped to the ground, instinct taking over. The echo bounced off the rocks. Another shot followed. Dirt exploded beside him. He rolled, looking for the source. On the opposite ridge, movement. Enemy sniper. He'd been spotted. Ryan turned to shout, but Scout was already gone, sprinting across the open slope, drawing the sniper's aim. "Scout!" "No!" The dog didn't stop. He ran fast, weaving through the grass. The sniper fired again, missed, fired again, and Ryan saw the puff of dirt beside Scout's leg. Ryan grabbed his rifle, took aim through the scope, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil jolted his arm. The enemy went down. Silence returned. He threw the rifle aside and ran. "Scout!" The dog was lying in the grass, breathing hard, his fur stained dark near the shoulder. Ryan dropped to his knees, pressing his hands against the wound. Hey, look at me. You're okay. You're okay, boy." Scout licked his hand weakly, his eyes half closed. "Don't you do this to me," Ryan whispered, voice cracking. "Not after everything. You don't get to stop now." He tore his shirt, wrapped it around the wound, lifted Scout into his arms, and started running toward the base. His legs screamed in pain. The world blurred around him. "Hold on," he said through his teeth. "We're almost there. Just hold on." The gates came into view. Soldiers shouted, running to meet him. He stumbled through, gasping for air. "Medic!" he yelled. "He's hit!" They took Scout from his arms, laid him on a stretcher, and carried him inside. Ryan followed until someone stopped him. "Let the medics work," a voice said. Ryan stood there, drenched, shaking, watching the doors close. For the first time in a long time, he prayed. He didn't pray for himself. He prayed for the dog that had become his reason to live. Ryan sat outside the infirmary, his back against the cold concrete wall, hands trembling from exhaustion. The corridor was quiet except for the distant hum of generators and the faint clatter of boots on tile. Every sound felt sharper, like the world was holding its breath with him. He stared at his hands, still stained with dried blood. Some of it his. Most of it Scout's. His mind kept replaying the moment, the way Scout had run into open fire, the way he'd fallen. It didn't make sense. Dogs don't think about heroism. They just act. They just love without hesitation. A medic stepped out, wiping his hands. Ryan stood immediately. "Is he?" The medic shook his head softly. "He's alive." "Barely. The bullet went through the shoulder. We took it out, but infection's setting in. He's strong, though. Stronger than most men I've seen." Ryan's throat closed up. "Can I see him?" "Just for a minute." Inside, the room smelled of antiseptic and wet fur. Scout lay wrapped in a blanket, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. His eyes opened when Ryan entered. Weak, but alive. Ryan knelt beside him, resting a hand gently on his head. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved me again." Scout blinked slowly, and for a moment, it felt like he understood every word. Ryan stayed there for hours, barely moving. He spoke in whispers, about the road they'd taken, the rain, the nights he thought they wouldn't make it. The words weren't for Scout as much as they were for himself. A few soldiers stopped by, curious about the story. One of them said quietly, That dog's a legend already. Ryan smiled faintly but didn't respond. Legends didn't matter. Survival did. As night fell, the base quieted down. Ryan still hadn't eaten or slept. His body screamed for rest, but he couldn't leave. He'd lost too much already: brothers, friends, even pieces of himself he'd never get back. He wasn't losing Scout too. The door creaked open, and an officer entered. Ryan stood. "Sir?" "At ease," the man said. He looked at the dog, then back at Ryan. "The command heard what you did. 2 days on the run, carrying an injured animal through enemy territory. That's something." Ryan shook his head. "I didn't carry him. He carried me." The officer paused, studying him for a long moment. "We'll get you both home soon. You've earned that." When he left, Ryan looked down at Scout again. "Home," he whispered. "You hear that? We're going home." But home was a strange word now. It didn't mean safety anymore. It meant the place where ghosts waited. The faces of men he couldn't save. The noise of memories that never stopped echoing. Days passed. Scout grew stronger. Each morning, he wagged his tail a little more. Ryan helped him walk again, slow steps down the hall. The soldiers cheered every time. It became a ritual, the man and the dog limping side by side, both stitched together by pain and persistence. One afternoon, Ryan took Scout outside for the first time. The air was warm, the sky clear. The sun felt unreal after so many days of darkness. Scout stood there for a moment, sniffing the wind like he was recognizing something sacred. Ryan knelt beside him. "You miss it, don't you? The open air. The sound of the trees. The quiet." He smiled. "I do too." Scout turned, licking the side of his face gently. Ryan laughed, a sound that felt strange coming from his throat. It had been months since he'd laughed. Maybe longer. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, Ryan couldn't sleep. He walked to the fence line, Scout padding beside him. In the distance, artillery flashed like lightning. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, he didn't feel lost in it. He sat in the grass, Scout lying against his leg. "Do you think it changes us?" he said softly. "All this, the running, the fear, the blood. Do you think we ever get to go back to who we were?" Scout's ears twitched at his voice, but he said nothing. The silence was its own kind of answer. Ryan took a deep breath. "I don't think we do. I think the best we can do is carry what we lost, and keep moving anyway." Scout looked up at him, eyes glinting in the moonlight, as if to say, "Then let's keep moving." The next morning, orders came. Ryan was being transported back to base headquarters for medical review. The war was shifting east. His unit had been reassigned. He packed what little he had, a canteen, a photo, the torn map that had led him here. When the transport truck rumbled up, he turned to Scout. "You ready?" The dog barked once, low, confident, certain. Ryan smiled. "Yeah. Me too." They climbed into the back of the truck together. As the engine started, Ryan looked out across the valley, the same path they had crawled through days ago. It looked so small now, so far away. He whispered, "We made it out of hell, didn't we?" Scout rested his head on Ryan's knee, eyes closing. The road stretched out before them, long, uncertain, but theirs. As the truck disappeared into the distance, the sky broke open with sunlight. Ryan leaned back, exhaustion finally pulling him under. He wasn't thinking about medals, or ranks, or missions. He was thinking about one thing, the sound of paws beside him, the steady rhythm that meant he wasn't alone. Because sometimes, saving a life doesn't come with glory. Sometimes it comes on 4 legs, with a quiet heart and endless loyalty. And sometimes, that's enough to save your soul. The flight home felt longer than the war itself. Ryan sat by the window, Scout lying at his feet, his head resting on Ryan's boot. Outside, clouds drifted beneath them like ghosts. Every hum of the engine reminded him of the silence that followed gunfire, the kind that lingers long after the noise stops. He looked down at Scout and smiled faintly. "Almost there, buddy," he whispered. "Almost home." When the plane landed, the air hit him differently. It smelled like rain and soil, not smoke and metal. Soldiers stepped off the ramp one by one, some limping, some silent, all carrying invisible weight. Ryan didn't expect a crowd. There were no cameras, no salutes, just the sound of boots on pavement and the distant cry of a child waiting for someone else's father. Scout trotted beside him, tail low but wagging. The dog didn't care about ceremonies. He just wanted to be where Ryan was. A few days later, Ryan found himself sitting on his porch, an untouched cup of coffee cooling beside him. The small town was quiet, too quiet for someone who lived through chaos. He thought coming home would feel like peace, but it felt more like confusion. What do you do when the battle's over, but the war inside your head isn't? Scout lay in the grass, belly up to the sun, finally resting without fear. Every so often, he'd glance toward the trees as if expecting a sound that wasn't coming. Ryan spoke softly, almost to himself. "You know, when they pulled us out of that valley, I didn't think I'd ever breathe again. I thought maybe I'd left everything worth saving behind. But you made me believe there's still good left in this world." Scout raised his head, tail thumping once against the ground. Ryan smiled. "Yeah, I'm talking to you. Don't act surprised." As weeks turned into months, they fell into a quiet rhythm. Long walks, late nights, slow mornings. People in town knew the story. They called Scout a hero. Kids ran up to pet him. Veterans nodded quietly when they saw Ryan. But to Ryan, Scout wasn't a symbol. He was a reminder. A living, breathing memory of what it meant to survive. Sometimes, at night, Ryan would wake in a cold sweat, the sounds of gunfire still echoing in his dreams. And every time, Scout would be there, paw on his chest, grounding him back to the present. The nightmares never fully stopped, but the fear lost its teeth. Because Ryan wasn't alone in them anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ryan took Scout down to the river where they used to fish before the war. The water shimmered gold. Scout waded in, barking at his reflection. Ryan laughed, a real, full laugh this time. He sat on a rock and watched the current. "You know," he said, "if anyone had told me a dog would be the reason I'm still breathing, I'd have laughed in their face. But here we are." Scout came out of the water, shook himself dry, and sat beside him. The years had begun to show, a little gray around his muzzle, slower steps, longer naps. Ryan noticed but didn't say it aloud. Some truths hurt too much to name. Time passed quietly. Seasons changed. Scout's strength faded, but his loyalty never did. One cold morning, Ryan found him lying on the porch, still and peaceful. The world seemed to stop. Ryan knelt beside him, his throat tightening. "You did it, boy," he whispered. "You saved me. You gave me everything." He buried Scout under the big oak near the river, the same place they'd sat so many times before. No markers, no fancy stones, just a simple collar tied to a branch. Ryan sat there until night fell, the stars spilling across the sky. He spoke softly, voice breaking. "You came into my life when I'd lost faith in everything. You didn't ask for anything in return. You just stayed. You reminded me what it means to fight for something pure." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I hope you're running free somewhere now. No guns, no fear, just open fields." The wind rustled through the leaves as if answering him. Years later, people would still talk about the soldier and the dog. They'd tell the story to their children, how a man saved a stray in a war zone, and how that dog repaid him in ways no human ever could. But Ryan never told the story himself. He didn't need to. It wasn't about heroism. It was about grace. About two lost souls who found each other when the world had given up on them both. Every year, Ryan visited that oak tree on the same day. He'd bring a single dog tag, place it by the collar, and whisper, "Still with me, buddy." And every time he walked away, the air felt lighter, as if Scout was still padding along beside him, invisible but near, the steady echo of paws in the dirt. In the end, Ryan learned something the battlefield never could teach him. that sometimes salvation doesn't come in the shape of a miracle. Sometimes it comes with a wagging tail and eyes that see the good in you even when you can't. Because love, loyalty, and courage, they don't wear uniforms. And even after war ends, they keep marching on.